All right, well, good evening. I love this intimate setting. My name is Dr. Yolanda Farmer, and I'm the Vice President here at Joliet Junior College for Student Development. So, on behalf of our college president, Dr. Mitchell, including the President's Cabinet, I welcome you to Joliet Junior College. Aligned with our mission, Joliet Junior College inspires learning, strengthens communities, and transforms lives. Thus, we are absolutely excited to host this event. Make sure Illinois counts to educate and empower our communities about the importance of the 2020 census. So I'd like to personally thank the library team members, the President Diversity and Inclusion Council, and specifically Michelle, where are you? Thank you so much, Rubal. And of course, all of our external partners for working collaboratively to coordinate this very important event. We thank you for your commitment and partnership for the 2020 census. So we are absolutely fortunate to have someone very special here today. His name is Joe Natale. He is the Chief Deputy Director of the Illinois State Library. He's with us this evening. He was scheduled pretty much to speak at the Illinois Library Association Conference in Tinley Park tomorrow, and has kindly offered to come discuss the 2020 census with our students, staff, faculty, and our public community. Joe has been taking the lead in the State Library 2020 census initiatives. He is a member of the Illinois Complete Count Commission State and Local Government Subcommittee. Joe will be introducing us to the big picture view of census and what it means to our state and region. So welcome, Chief Deputy Director.
I know she mentioned that I came up here because of that conference, but I would have came up for the cookies, so it doesn't matter. Let's see. Here we go. That's the logo for the Complete Count Commission. Now, that's me. I'm on the member of the State and Local Government Subcommittee of the Complete Count Committee. Now, you may wonder why someone from the State Library, a librarian, talking to you about the census. The commission was formed in 2017 by the state legislature to educate communities and organizations about the importance of the census. And it was placed under the Office of Secretary of State, Jesse White. That's the state library. He's the state librarian. So that's why the libraries are figuring in on this. And the main purpose of the commission is to educate, encourage, and engage people in the state to participate in the census, to get the word out, tell people in your communities, find the hard to count communities, build up relationships with them so then they feel comfortable doing the census. One thing that the state library, what we did was we received a pallet of promotional flyers from the Census Bureau, and they printed them on very heavy stock. But we in Spanish and English, and we mailed them to over 700 public libraries and branches of the Chicago Public Library. And those packages, we worked on it for about 2 weeks, were 3 to 6 pounds, so we all got a workout putting them together. And the census, it's important because it funds libraries, it funds roads, schools, healthcare. It helps the poor, senior citizens, rural communities, the homeless population, and businesses use census data. If you're, let's say, a big business or a business I want to locate in Joliet, well, you've got the interstates here, 55 and 80 intersecting, but you're going to need, demographic information, and the census provides that. And besides large businesses, small businesses, if they're writing a business plan to go to the bank and get money for a loan, they need to provide demographic information. So up-to-date, accurate data is vital. Census Day is April 1, give or take 2 weeks. We'll get into that. It is authorized by the Section 2 of the Constitution, it's Article 1, Section 2. Gotta fix that. And that is that every 10 years, the population is counted for the purpose of apportioning legislators and distributing tax funds among the states. I think the big headline on this census, in the past it was done by mail, people coming to your door, which will still go on, but primarily it's going to be done online. And that presents a host of challenges and opportunities. It's not going to be easy for some. There's all kinds of numbers on how much this census is going to impact the state. But the George Washington University Policy Center, that over the lifetime of this census, 2020 to 2030, it could impact Illinois by $34 billion. So that's a lot of money. Two things about the census. Reapportionment. There are 435 representatives in the House of Representatives. Each state gets 50 representatives. And then it is decided proportionally. The larger states get more people, the smaller states get less people. I tried to copy a formula and try to explain how it works, but I might as well be reading those science books about space travel, because it is a real complicated formula. And then redistricting, that's when the data goes to the states, and then the states decide how they're going to draw up congressional districts and state representative districts and state senators. And that term is also known as gerrymandering, but that's what it's used for. It's a possibility that Illinois might lose one congressional seat. We have 18 now. We may lose one, and some are saying 2, but I think it's kind of settling at 1. Here's a map that shows what's projected. Illinois was 17. Our population in 2010 was 12.8 million. It's projected for 2020 to be 12.7 million. So you do the math, that's 100,000 people or more that are leaving the state. Some say they don't like the taxes, or they don't like government, or they don't like the weather. But for whatever reason, people are leaving the state. But that might just be ebb and flow of, the country is 254 years old. We had a mass migration from the south before, and so it's going to change over the years. States, I probably should have put this slide somewhere else, are investing heavily in this census. Illinois is investing $30.5 million. California, $187 million. New Jersey, $9 million. New York, $20 million. The mayor of Macomb is on the Complete Count Commission, says, I've never known the census to be so controversial. I said, I always considered it to be kind of a yawner, but people are really fired up about this census. Here's the timeline, and there's census people here, and they can correct me. March 12th to the 20th, the invitations are going to go out, and everybody, or most people, will receive an invitation card. And I just found Illinois has sent all their addresses to the Census Bureau. They've been verified. So starting around there is when people will start entering their census online. Or they can do it over the phone. A reminder postcard will go out March 26th to the 3rd. Another reminder and a paper questionnaire will come out in April. Then a final reminder, and then people will start knocking on doors to get what they've missed. In December, the counts go to the president, and then in March, they go to the state for redistricting. So 95% will receive their census invitation by mail. They can do it by online, in paper by mail, or on their smartphone. There is an app. There's an app for that. we get questions about the special populations. Nursing homes, residents in nursing homes will be counted in those facilities on April 1st. Prisoners, the facilities they're in, will be counted April 1st. The homeless will be at pre-identified areas, March 30th, 31st, April 1st. That'd be like soup lines, shelters. And I know some people are worried about double counting and all that, but there are algorithms that'll kind of sort all that out. Hard to count populations, and that's really what we're trying to focus on. And a lot of the activity in the state and funding is targeted on this hard to count. And I'm surprised one of the largest groups are children aged under 5. The homeless, lower income, lower education, English language user, veterans, minority communities, college students. If you live in where you go to college, then that's where you do your census. Foreign-born residents, snowbirds, people who go south for the winter, farmers and renters. In this area, there is a hard-to-count population area that's been identified. I'm not going to jump on the internet, but I did screenshots. This is the hard-to-count map. And in Joliet, you can see, I guess that east area is a hard-to-count area. And then this is the response outreach area mapper, Rome, and it pretty much shows the same thing. And this will be continually updated when the census gets rolling, so as the man from the census said, it's going to be a living, breathing thing. But I put the URLs on there. You can just type in Rome census. Barriers to being countered, language barriers, privacy, cyber concerns, inaccessible multifamily units in gated communities, non-traditional living arrangements, lack of reliable broadband, and mistrust of government. On the mistrust of government, the groups that are working to promote the census, libraries, they should be considered trusted voices. And even Mr. Rogers said this sounds trite, but his mother said, go to the helpers. So go to the helpers in your community that you trust to, give you guidance on doing the census. My other bit of advice, I was at a meeting of the Department of Human Services, and they were concerned about senior citizens not knowing how to use computers and all that. And one time a library was having trouble trying to figure out a computer. And I helped them. I said, I don't mind helping you, but in the future, you can go find a 5th grader, and they can help you. So, young kids can help. You can engage young kids into participating in this. And we did send a letter to libraries asking them to have public access terminals available. They don't necessarily have to be earmarked, this is for the census, but let people come in and use their terminals. I don't think it takes that long to fill out the census form. I heard 10 minutes, but, and by law, this information is confidential. This picture is from the Census Bureau, so they do have a sense of humor. There are some websites that have resources. This is the Census Bureau website. Forefront is an affiliation of not-for-profits that people collect money and then distribute it to them to do activities, and they're doing a lot of hard-to-count activities, and they have a lot of resource on community outreach. This is the Illinois Complete Count Commission. This is their website. And then the Department of Human Services, they're involved now, and this is their website, and they too have resources. There's lots of money I mentioned earlier. The Secretary of State, our office, had census participation grants. We awarded $1.5 million to 18 entities. Just Friday, the Department of Human Services announced their regional and intermediaries grant, $20 million to 30 grants, for 30 grants. One of the grants, is anybody here from the Rails Library System? They received $750,000 to get out the hard-to-count communities in the collar counties around Chicago. That's a lot. Out of 20 million, that's quite a bit of money. So we were very happy to see that. One other thing we're promoting, and if your community sets up a complete count commission to coordinate census activities, these are the type of people you can have on the committee. One group that's really fired up about is the faith-based communities. They want people to come into churches and do the census. They're really, they asked a question, a woman from the group the other day. What's a complete and accurate count? Well, the silence was deafening. I don't think we're going to know until it's over. I think we'll have to put it in context. What's the count of Illinois? What's the hard-to-count community? What was their turnout? Do we hit that 12.7 million number? We even, we were undercounted. We believe we were undercounted in 2010, and that's why there's such a big effort this year. So we don't know what a complete count is. And in a democratic society, a fair and accurate count is critical and relies on all of us to participate and complete the census. That's my contact information. And that's the 30,000 views.
Thank you so much, Joe, for sharing that wonderful information with us. And since we've had some conversations about the importance of getting out and really getting individuals involved in the process, I have the pleasure of introducing our second speaker. So we would also like to welcome the Get Out and Count campaign coordinator, Verenise Alvarez. Her work with the Spanish Community Center is to mobilize outreach efforts to hard-to-count populations of our local communities. A former public school teacher, she was recently part of the Obama Foundation training cohort as one of the 150 college students nominated and recognized for their community service efforts by President Barack Obama. Her talk would focus on the 2020 census at the local level and how we can make sure that everyone counts. So at this time, I would like to introduce Ms. Alvarez.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for the invitation to Michelle and the JJC staff. I'm very excited to share about our plans that we have. The Spanish Community Center has been working very hard towards outreach in the local Joliet area, and that includes Crest Hill. And as of last week, because we received additional funding, we'll be reaching out to University Park and Crete as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along the slides. The census is something that's very close to my heart because 10 years ago I worked for the Census Bureau. It was my first job out of high school. And so for me it's like, wow, 10 years has gone by already. Time flies. So I'm very excited to share more about the census, this time in a different type of role, but a lot of it is the same, so I'm glad that I can help towards this effort. So we have launched the We Count, Todos Contamos 2020 campaign, and that is a bilingual campaign that is focusing on the Joliet area hard-to-count communities, which includes all of the hard-to-count populations, as Joe mentioned. Let me see. Oh yeah, here we have a clicker. That'll make it easier. So we received funding from the Secretary of State and Forefront, as Joe recently mentioned, and their goal is to increase the self-response rate by 4 to 5% in the hard-to-count geographic areas and populations. And if you remember from the map, it's all like in yellow, orange, and red, and whenever anything is in red, you know that that's not good, right? So we want to make sure that we target those communities because it is predominantly hard to count. And how are we going to do this? That's the question, because we're giving a task on, we need to increase the count. How are we going to do this? And we have a strategy where we're going to be doing public education, we're doing outreach, communications, we're doing special events such as this one, we're mobilizing, and so we're also seeking to recruit volunteers and canvassers for the upcoming year so that we can make sure that we target and reach all of those hard to count communities. And so this is our website. It's WeCount2020SCC.org. And that's because WeCount 2020 was already taken. So we just added the SCC for Spanish Community Center afterwards. And so what we'll be doing in the near future is that you'll be seeing more of the social media ads. We will be having billboards around the community. So you'll probably be seeing our logo, WeCount 2020. If you haven't picked up a button, make sure you do so. We have bags, so just so you're familiar with the logo, so if you see it, you'll know that that's us doing outreach. Another big thing that we're doing is we're partnering with the City of Joliet, and Kendall Jackson is here from the City of Joliet, and he and the Spanish Community Center, along with the Census Bureau, have partnered so that we send water bill reminders to every single resident in Joliet area and the surrounding unincorporated areas. And so you might be getting a reminder just to kind of, hey, like, don't forget to fill out your census, pay your bill, and also fill out your census, right? And so this is the map that Joe showed us. I kind of zoomed it in a little bit more. As you can see, the zip codes that are listed are those that are in the Joliet area. But also, if you see that Chris Hill has a very large red area, why do you think that is? What's there at the moment?
Statesville.
Yeah, it's Statesville, yeah. So we have to come up with a different plan or strategy to count those who are in the group quarters. And I know the Census Bureau has a plan on how to do that. And so we're just trying to make sure that we reach the right people so that we bring awareness to that community so that there's not an undercount for the next year. And thanks to the additional funding that we received, we will be expanding towards University Park, which is still part of Will County, and then Crete, which is all the way up there. And so we don't want to forget about them. They're kind of like really far off to the east side. And so we're glad that we're able to actually hire an additional person. So there might be another me. And they will be specifically targeting those two areas. And also, we're partnering with the national campaign, which is the Count All Kids Census 2020. As Joe mentioned, the population that was hardest to count in the previous census were children under 5. And so this, with additional funds, we'll be launching a campaign that targets the children and the community. And this is mostly based because parents just forget to count their kids. It's not because they didn't fill out the forms, it's just that they just don't think that their kids count. And so we want to make sure that we raise awareness that if you have a baby on April 1st, that you need to make sure that that baby's counted. And so just to kind of like add a little extra notes on more emphasis towards counting children. And so something that's really neat that Vinita and Jennifer from the Census Bureau have taken the time to kind of train me and kind of learn a little bit more about my community is how to use the Response Outreach Area Mapper, or ROAM for short. And this is something that you can do in your free time if you choose to do so. Since I'm a big census nerd, I like to play around with it just to kind of get to see what demographic area looks like, what certain population lives there. As you can see here in the in the downtown area of Joliet, and including part of the east side, the majority of the population is Hispanic. So that's going to really change how we communicate and how we come up with messaging for that specific area, because we want to make sure that we include information in Spanish because they are majority Hispanic. And then this also tells me that a lot of that population they don't have internet access. And so one of the best partnerships that we have is with the local libraries, the Joliet Public Library. Denise is here, and we're working really hard together so that we can have assigned computer kiosks so that people are aware that, hey, you can fill out your census here, and it's actually going to have signage, so we'll have a designated spot. So if the community is looking to fill out their census forms, they can go to the libraries. They can also come to City Center. The Spanish Community Center will also have computers, and as well as I believe JJC will also have computers available. And then something that I thought was really cool is just like if you go a little bit further down this way in this tract area, the population demographic changes a lot. So there, the majority of the population is non-Hispanic Black, and so we also have to have a specific strategy on how to reach that community and what messaging works for that community as well. And again, internet access is one of those big factors that might prevent people from filling out their forms, and so we want to make sure that we are partnering with the right organization so that we have computers available for them. I know it's a lot of data, but I'm just kind of like choosing what's most important for our purposes, right? And so we kind of are easing out of like the education phase. We did start early this year. We've launched the bilingual marketing campaign. We have a website. We held the WeCount 2020 Todos Contamos kickoff event, and so we were able to come with the presence of both the mayor of Joliet and the mayor of Crest Hill, and as well as Senator Pat McGuire was there to share a few messages and also help us with outreach. He's been a really key partner into reaching the people in group quarters in Statesville, so we're really glad that we formed that partnership and we have the community support. And so something that I'm also currently doing is like I'm here, I'm giving presentations, I'm at neighborhood association meetings, and just pretty much telling the people about the We Count campaign, and then also promoting census jobs and how you can become involved, because we will be recruiting in the very near future. So if anyone would like to volunteer or actually apply for a job, because we will be hiring lead canvassers as well, be sure to contact me so that we can make it happen. Oh, also one more thing before I forget. We are going to be hosting our first Joliet Area Complete Count Committee meeting on November 14th. And we are really working close with the city of Joliet to ensure that we have the right people at the table so that the community is getting their information from trusted messengers, whether it's from like the faith-based community, from schools, from superintendents. It's really important that we have the right people there, because if you hear from someone that you trust, then you know you're more willing to follow up and actually fill out the census. And I know I don't have a lot of time, so I'm kind of going to run a little bit fast through these. So this is, we did get coverage from the Herald News. We have a YouTube channel, so if you want to kind of see some of the videos from the kickoff, you're more than welcome to. And now what we're doing is promoting census jobs and also recruiting, like I said. And so right now we're in the middle of the motivation phase, and you'll be seeing a lot of campaign ads or social media ads like this one. Like, what is the census? Why is it important? And we want to make sure that it's inclusive, that we include information from our trusted partners, including the Census Bureau, but then there's also NALEO, which focuses on just the Hispanic community, and other organizations that are able to provide resources in other languages other than just English and Spanish. So stay on the lookout for more of that. And we've been very busy. We've been out there in the community. Most recently, we were at the Fiesta en la Calle event. We were at the Day of the Immigrant event in Bolingbrook, and that was a lot of fun. And people are very receptive as like just trying to learn more about the census, because to my surprise, most of the Hispanic community doesn't know about the census, or they've heard of it, but they're not really sure why it's important, or if they even should fill it out, because there's still that little bit of fear that because it comes from the government, they're not going to want to share their information. And so it's really important that we talk to them and say it's confidential, this information is only for census purposes. All they're doing is just getting a number, right? They're not actually going to go and look up your name and address. It's just, we just want to get a good feeling of what the community looks like and how many people live there. And when you tie that to services that they may actually be receiving, then they're like, oh, this is actually really important, especially if it's for like food stamps, for school lunches, for health services, then they kind of understand that it's important and that they should fill it out. And so that's been a very successful way to share the message, and they seem very receptive when you put it in those terms. And in early March of 2020, that's when we'll be starting campusing. So the campuses will be wearing t-shirts like the one that I'm wearing right now, just so that people are not kind of like afraid to open the door. No offense to the Census Bureau that's here, right? But everybody's dressed in like business wear, right? And if someone that comes to your door that looks like they work from the government, I don't think you really want to open the door, right? And so we've done this intentionally so that it's like a bright color, that it's not intimidating, and a logo that's like modern. And so people are like, oh, I've seen you at Dia del Inmigrante, I saw you at Fiesta en la Calle, I saw you at the Kermés. And if they recognize the shirt, I think they'll be more willing to open their door. And what we'll be doing is just filling out a short survey, just asking, did you fill it out? And if not, do you have questions? And that's pretty much it, just to kind of give like that friendly reminder. So we've talked a lot about the campaign and the strategies and what we're doing, messaging, but the overall thing to take away is that there's a lot at stake for Will County. And that is over $219 million is at stake per year if we get an undercount as we did in 2010. So we want to make sure that we reach everybody and that we don't lose this funding, because that's funding that we need for our schools, for park districts, for libraries, infrastructures, and et cetera. There's like a whole list of services that funding goes towards too. And so we want to make sure that we are aware of what could be lost if we have an undercount again. And not only that, but as Joe mentioned, that we could lose congressional seats. So that means less representation in government, right? I don't think that's okay, especially coming with the upcoming election, right? We want to make sure that our voices are heard and that we're accounted for. Not only that, but less of appropriation of dollars, loss to the local economy, less money for police and fire services. So that's something that everybody pretty much is for, right? It's not very political. It's like we want to make sure that we have enough money for our fire services, for our police, for our schools. And I think that sharing that message really removes the politics behind it. So we want to make sure that we kind of drive that home, that this money is not for reasons that you think like just helping the immigrants or those who are undocumented. It's like, no, this is for services. Because I've gotten pushback from both extremes, right? Like if the citizenship question is not going to be included, then I'm not going to fill out the census. And that was a response that I got recently, last week at one of the neighborhood meetings, that because that question is not going to be there, then I'm not going to fill it out. So we want to make sure that we kind of take a step back and not make it political and just share the information, just make sure that we are educated enough to answer those type of questions so there's no misunderstandings and that we do get a full count. And so we are here because we need your help. So how can you help? You can make sure that you're up to speed with the census timeline, their operational dates and activities. We also want to make sure that you're aware of all of the information that's available, especially with like counting children and reaching the hard to count. The Census Bureau has a wonderful website with a lot of fact sheets of information, and our website also has information in Spanish, so if you're looking for something that's in Spanish, you can come to our website. And we just want to make sure that you are talking about the census. Keep the conversation going. Don't let it just stop here. As soon as you leave this room, if you have a coworker that you see tomorrow, your boss, if you want to host a workshop, make sure that you bring that up to the table so that we keep the conversation going, so then when Census Day comes, it's not a big surprise and it's just something that's like common sense, right? Oh, it's here, let's fill it out, no big deal, right? And so we want to make sure that we empower our communities and that we get the word out, because we need to empower the undercounted. We need to let their voices be heard, because they matter, and if we don't count them all, then we won't get the funding that we need. And that's all I have for today. And if you have any questions, thank you. And I do have my email up there in case you need to reach out or have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was very powerful. And at this time, to facilitate the panel discussion, because I'm sure you have tons of questions at this time, right? So again, this program was an opportunity to educate, engage, and empower. I love that. Thank you. So at this point, I would like to invite Amy Walker to the podium to facilitate the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Farmer. Thanks to Joe and Verenise for your information and insight on this. But now we'd also like to ask to join them to answer your questions. Local U.S. Census Bureau Partnership Specialists Vinita Voss and Jennifer Plumey. If you'd like to come up here. Vinita joined the Bureau in 2018, having previously functioned as a primary lobbyist for area organizations and as a staffer for the Illinois General Assembly. Vinita enjoys developing and fostering strategic partnerships and engaging communities in various outreach initiatives. Jennifer joined the Bureau this past year after working for 17 years in the insurance industry. She inspires confidence and trust anywhere she goes and enjoys sharing information with others. She is available to address any questions here or afterwards in Spanish or English. If you have any questions for our panelists, we do ask that you step to the microphone. I think we'll probably try to pass the microphone around a little bit to make it a little easier. We can bring the microphone to you. Just raise your hand, let us know, and let's go ahead and begin.
So shy.
I'm sure there are tons of questions. Great. Do you have any questions?
And we did a good job, Joe, right?
I don't think I need this, but I do want to just acknowledge our local partners, our area libraries that are here represented. Thank you so much for all that you do for sharing all of the information. We have some recruiting information here, so even if you're not looking for a job, please take some recruiting materials because there's someone that you encounter that may be interested in a job with the U.S. Census Bureau. I want to also especially thank Joe and Verenise for everything that they shared today, all this wonderful information, as well as, of course, JJC. Thank you so much for pulling this all together. Michelle, this is phenomenal. Thank you for that. City of Joliet, Kendall Jackson, for the partnership with the U.S. Census Bureau, as well as we have Meta Mueller here with the Will County Board. And Will County will start their CCC activities very soon as well. So there's a lot going on within Will County and the Joliet area, Crest Hill and Rockdale included as well. So thank you very much for these partnerships with the U.S. Census Bureau and ensuring that we have a complete and accurate count. If you have any questions whatsoever, please ask away. Sir.
Hello. So if one question on jobs that you're bringing up, and especially here at JJC, how feasible and realistic is it for an undergraduate student or someone studying part-time or working part-time already to actually get this job? And is the application extensive? Is there 1 to 2 years, 0 years experience? Because I actually got an email following your newsletter that you're already taking applications. So I'm just wondering to our community leaders how they can advocate for someone not in this room today to maybe they're looking for a job. And what does that actually look like? And you've worked there, so maybe some experience on that.
Sure. We have our recruiting assistants here. If maybe one of our recruiting assistants wants to address the question. But it's very feasible, I'll tell you. Many moons ago, I was actually a census enumerator in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was an undergrad, poli-sci major. And it's something that I decided that I wanted to take on. It was, to do my civic duty. I was not aware of the area. I was not familiar with it. It did take me some time to gain the trust of the community because I was kind of an outsider to the community. But I received great training and just continued to go back and explain what I was doing and the importance of it. I worked around my schedule. It's very flexible. Michelle can speak to that. So very flexible around your work hours. I believe we asked that you commit to about how many hours, Michelle?
The minimum hours is 20 hours per week, maximum hours 40 hours a week. We have the flexibility into the schedule since your work day actually starts on a Sunday and it ends on a Saturday. So you could see that if you want 20 hours, you could actually work on the weekends and maybe one more day during the week. You already have added your hours to 20 hours or plus, more than that. Or if you have 40 hours, like for myself, I work average of 32 through 37 hours a week. I usually make my own hours because I have everything scheduled out, anything between 9 o'clock it could start at noon. So I have some flexibility throughout the week. And you could see yourself as a student that maybe your mornings are scheduled up with classes, but you might actually have 3 or 4 hours each day to actually give for a part-time or up to a full-time job. So the flexibility is there for you.
Absolutely. We have parents, we have retirees, we have teachers, we have a lot of people applying for these jobs and working in the positions already.
And it's great pay. I know that I think it's starting at like $19.50 the hour. And so if you're in like a recent high school graduate like myself, that was like the best job I could ever have, right? Especially because I didn't have any experience, but that gives you government work experience, and they pretty much already tailor your like resume description for you. So you've got nothing to lose other than gain more money, right?
And the other thing is that it's important that as soon as you make the decision, you want to apply to it as soon as possible, because the process can take 2 months, 1 month. Every case is different, but the faster you enter your application, the better chance you have to get a job. Okay.
And I know that they need a lot of Spanish-speaking enumerators or just general people who speak Spanish or any other language, because there is such a high demand that if you have another language, even if you are not a citizen, that you could still apply.
Also know that they're going to try to put you in the area where your residence is. When you fill out the application, they practically ask you how many miles are you willing to drive or are you willing to go. So the more flexible you are, the more opportunity you have to be hired. And they do want you to work in your community because you are a familiar face and you probably know the area. And if that's not possible and you're willing to go farther, then great, because some people, we might not find people to go farther, or we might not have people to work on those areas that are remote, right? You have a question?
Just a quick question. Thank you. So I'm interested. This doesn't even work, but everyone can hear me.
It's for the recording.
Oh. All right. So I was concerned about a little bit about opportunities as a resident. I'm not a citizen, so I want some answers about that. How many opportunities are for non-citizens?
So basically right now we're facing actually a deficit when it comes to the Spanish language within Will County. Right now I'm looking for 50 bilingual Spanish, English speaking individuals that will be able to participate in the enumeration, which is their survey takers that we have. You would have thought that by now we've fulfilled that, but unfortunately that has not been the case. So right now we definitely need them. And it's basically for translation purposes. And basically you'd be working in an office, it could be a remote, because most of our jobs are remote. So basically what I mean by that is that you actually will be issued an iPad or a laptop, and from there you actually work from your own assignments that will be given to you. So your home address is actually your office. And that's the greatest thing about one of these jobs, is that the flexibility is there, not just for the hours or the time you have to give, but you're actually working from your own home. And even for those that are not bilingual, just ultimately, that's the flexibility for them too, as well. Like your friends that you might actually be in class with. Yes.
So at this time, we're asking everyone to apply. If you have an interest, please go ahead and apply. And then the application system will let you know if you're eligible or when you're eligible, because sometimes we actually ask 17-year-olds if they're going to turn 18, because you have to be 18 and over. So we even ask 17-year-olds to go ahead and apply if they will be turning 18 soon. So feel free to share that information as well. And so when you become eligible, then you will be contacted accordingly.
Any questions? In your presentation, you made a very interesting point about how do you count the uncounted, and I wondered if you could elaborate just a little bit more. My reason for the question is I'm a public library director, Sugar Grove Library in Kane County, and oftentimes libraries heavily depend upon numbers that we receive, both for our per capita grants as well as determining eligibility for grants. So an excellent count is really a high priority for us. And libraries are also a place where people that are underserved come into for help, for resources and assistance. An example of this might be my sister that lives in Naperville. The house next door to her is rented out to one person, and it's subletted, that's like micro subletted, undocumented, to a number of families that we believe are just arriving here. So how do you count the uncounted if you really don't have documentation of how many people may live there? Because those can be the people, particularly in urban areas, that are coming in institutions like libraries seeking help. So I just wanted a little bit more information on how do you document those numbers when you don't have documentations of their existence?
That's where our partners are, that's why our partners are so important. You gotta let us know what are you seeing and what are you receiving and having in your library, so we can find one of our enumerators and let them know to come a specific day to count those people. They're probably people experiencing homelessness, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, my sister lives in Naperville, and no, I think these are people that are just emigrating to the United States. So, this could be a scenario of a variety of different situations,
They're just
be it homeless or just arriving.
Are they just like living in the house for
Yes.
a certain period of time and then moving?
When you have a house where there's a lot of families that reside in order to, get a start.
Okay, so yes, those people are going to be counted in that specific address. So whoever lives there is going to receive the invitation to fill out the census. And they just have to fill out the census for everybody that lives there. And that's it.
And there are a number of additional ways that we try to make sure that we have an accurate count. For example, when we're working with our local governments and they go through this entire process, it gets pretty complicated and a lot of times they're not happy with this. But our local update of census addresses. And it's this, process where they're providing us all of the information about the addresses within their city boundaries, within their limits. And then we also receive information from the counties as well. So we have all of those addresses so that we can make sure that we are sending all of the updated material to those particular addresses. And then we have our address canvassing operation where we send our field staff out as well. And, we're in the process of doing that right now. So you may see some census field staff kind of knocking on doors, verifying addresses with their tablets or their phones, wondering why people are driving around, looking at homes. And so they're actually updating addresses to make sure that we have the accurate information. We have a situation, for example, I like to use the example of Grundy County where we have Coal City and Diamond, who are also our partners as well with their complete count committees. And we know that unfortunately, some time ago, they had tornadoes come through that area. So there are some homes that are no longer standing there. So we have different questions about, is the home, has it been rebuilt? Is it standing? Has it been destroyed? So it's just part of our checks and balances to send our staff out to ensure that we have updated information on all of the addresses. So that particular address, those addresses that you're referring to, they will receive materials regarding the census, whether paper questionnaires or postcards, letting them know how that they can respond, how to respond. And then you, as well as our partners in the libraries, food pantries, places of worship, other community-based organizations, community centers, YMCAs, park districts, are, you know, again, those trusted voices. So you help to get that information out there so that they're aware of it and that they know that they should be counted as well. So that's why these partnerships are extremely important.
In the presentation, you mentioned the partnerships, and one of them includes the City of Joliet. I was wondering if partnerships with municipalities is unique, and if partnerships of that type are helpful in terms of getting people out to participate in the census, because as the presentation highlighted, there's a lot of distrust and disengagement with politicians and stuff.
That's a great question. So we were very purposeful as far as naming the campaign like Joliet area, and that was because we want to make it all encompassing, especially of our near like municipalities or unincorporated communities. And so we are partnering with the City of Joliet so that we're able to also reach the right leaders, community leaders, and organizations. Nonprofit organizations are key players in doing outreach because they're in the communities and they get so many people coming in and out that if they have questions about the census, then they can help answer those questions. And if, as far as like the distrust in government, it all has to do with messaging and who it comes from, right? So if there's distrust in government, I think you might be more open at least have a conversation about the census, and if it comes from someone that you trust, say a neighbor or your pastor or someone that you see every day and like at work, like from your boss, for example, if that conversation's happening, at least you are opening the door to at least inform them about the importance and how there are certain measures that the Census Bureau has taken so that that information is confidential. And I know that they can talk a little bit more about that, but it's just, that's why the partnerships with trusted messengers is so important, so that we reach the people that do have distrust in government, we reach the people that may not speak the language, so that we give them the right information, and it's coming from a trusted source as well.
And part of our whole national partnerships efforts through our community partnership and engagement program is actually to form these partnerships with every municipality throughout the country. So at every level, from our state level with our Illinois Complete Count Commission to our county, to our municipalities, to make sure that we have the right leaders, organizations, community members at the table, and that we are able to get their participation and able to help to educate the community and encourage and engage them in this process as well. So it is actually, I guess you could say in this venture, it's kind of unique, the type of partnerships that we're forming, but we're forming them at every single level. We're also forming these complete count commissions at the organizational level as well, and Jennifer does a lot of work with that. So we really want to make sure that we ensure that everyone is counted, and in order to do that, we have to make sure that we are touching every single level that every person may be interacting with.
I know you've mentioned a lot of governmental and nonprofit partners. Do you work with any large employers in the area or others like that in order to be able to reach others, who have a lot of connections throughout this area?
Absolutely. So we have our national partnerships program, and those are some of the larger corporations and organizations that are on board, like our YMCA and organizations of that nature. But we're also working with local corporations. One that I can share because they've provided me permission to share this publicly is that we're actually going to be working with ComEd, and they're going to provide some information in some of their newsletters. We're working on the bills, but they're doing this at their cost. So this is going to go to millions of customers in the area. So we're very excited about that, but we're definitely reaching out to local corporations as well.
I was just curious, what are the number of workers that you're going to be looking for maybe, Joliet, you talked about Joliet and Crest Hill. Is there, do you have a roundabout number of how many people you're actually looking to work to do the counting?
Well, we're actually kind of staying away from providing a specific number now because it really depends on the operation. It depends on how many people respond right off the bat, right? Because the more people that respond, what we call self-respond, so you receive it, by mail, or, you go online or by telephone and you respond, the less people that we may need in the field for what we call that non-response follow-up. And it's basically the knocking on the doors, we haven't received any information for you, can you please fill out the census form? The number of applicants right now, I'm hearing is kind of in the thousands, that we need thousands of people to apply. But we're really at this point kind of not sharing any specific number because it really varies. But it's a large amount that we need because this is such a huge undertaking right now. So thousands of jobs, thousands of applicants rather, at this point.
You may have said this already, but what was the age, the minimum age for the folks you're hiring?
18 and over.
18 and over,
But
okay.
17-year-olds, if they're going to turn 18 fairly soon, we ask that they apply as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Well, I'm sure that our speakers will be around for a few minutes afterwards to answer if you have any additional questions that you would like to ask. So thank you all. To all of our participants and everyone who came tonight, I want to thank specifically the wonderful We Count volunteers, some of whom are our own JJC graduates. To our census recruiting assistants who've been manning the job tables tonight, to the volunteers at our remote sites, and let's see, to our speakers and panelists, Joe, Verenise, Vinita, and Jennifer. To all of you for attending, and now are going to be spreading the word on how important it is to make sure Illinois counts. Please visit the links on your program for contact information, more details about the census. And again, thank you for attending and have a lovely evening.
Thank you.